Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited to be here doing this live today. It's just such an honor to be doing this. I'm so excited. For those that are coming across me for the first time, my name is Maureen Chiana, and I am the CEO and founder of the Mindsight Academy. I'm the host on Lead to Excel podcast and also run Mindsight Women's Network. I use brain science to empower leaders and teams to achieve high performance. And I specifically have a real deep passion for supporting Christian women to thrive in every area of their life. So today, I am so excited. If you're watching this live, could you just tell us where you're joining from? That would be absolutely great. And if you're watching this on replay, it would be good for you to also tell us where you're joining from, but also put replay there so that I know where you're joining us from. So today, we're going to really be looking at emotional intelligence. I'm going to put on this fan and I hope it does not interfere with the audio. If it does, yeah, just let me know if it's interfering. So, if you've got questions as I go along, it would be great also if you pop it into the chat, then I can pick the questions from there. So I am really excited to be doing this. And it's one of these things that, at this time of the year, especially as we get into February, many people have set goals. And it gets to a time that, especially now, many people have probably given up on those goals. Why? Because life happens. And this is why I really want to do this podcast today. It's taking us to or helping us understand why that happens, but also how to avoid it. One of the things that I've found over the years is the power of emotions. And I'll just give you a bit of intro into my own journey. Because when I had a business that I closed, and when I closed it, I felt so low at such an emotional place. And it was such a struggle how to get back. When you're in a valley, it's a case of how do I get back out of this? I knew the emotions I was going through: sadness, frustration, identifying as a failure, a lot of emotions. And all these emotions were negative, as you can imagine. But what I noticed is what it was creating: a lot of inaction for me. And, oh, Kaka, hi, so good to see you. Kaka's Kitchen, I love that. So good to have you here. So please keep popping into the chat where you're joining us from. That would be awesome. And if you've got questions, remember to pop them in. Kaka, thank you. It's so good to have you. So yeah, it's and that journey was one of how do I get out of here? How do I change these emotions? Because I knew they were preventing me from doing what I wanted to do. And that was when my research brain kicked back in, because I used to work in medical research years before. And the research brain kicked back in, and it took me to really wanting to understand the brain. And in the process of understanding how the brain impacts on our behavior, I discovered emotional intelligence, and that completely blew my mind, especially on the seeing how the science was confirming scripture and even making me understand why scripture says a lot of things that we should do. So today I want us to focus on the aspect of emotions and the impact that it has on decision making. So one of the key things about about emotions is a lot of times when we talk about emotional intelligence, we're thinking about our body. How do I feel? What emotions am I going through? But what I'm going to take you through is the back, kind of going back to basics and looking at this organ, this most important organ of ours, this organ, the brain, that we tend to ignore. It's the one that makes us make all the decisions that we make, but it's one that we don't really pay much attention to: the brain. So I'm going to introduce you to your brain today. And I hope at the end of this that you can, take control of it or manage it, if I would say, because a lot of times we can't actually control actually one part of the brain, which I'll tell you about, but you can manage it. You learn to manage it, and that literally is taking control of it. So, emotions, where do they arise? One of the key things about emotions, okay, if I look at the brain itself, we've got the different parts of the brain, but I won't go into all that. I want us to kind of go inside, looking deep into the brain now. And what you find is that this part of the brain, which is our prefrontal cortex, is the part of the brain that enables us make decisions, that enables us look into the future, that enables us think about things. But also you've got the emotional part of the brain, which is, and the emotional part of the brain, the main two organs that are so important in this part of the brain are known as the amygdala and the hippocampus, those two. But I'll talk about the amygdala first, because when information comes into the brain, the thalamus scans it, and then what it does, it sends it to the amygdala. The amygdala in particular is what then determines, it kind of looks at the information and then determines, is this a threat or is this a reward? Is this something good or is this something positive? Why does our brain do this? It does it because our brain is trying to protect us. That's all it's trying to do. It's trying to keep us safe. So that emotional part of the brain really is looking to see, do I have any information about similar to this in memory? The other part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, is also getting the information, but it gets it later than this emotional part of the brain. So the prefrontal cortex gets it later. But the emotional part of the brain is so powerful. It's powerful and it acts really fast as well. And the reason for that is, if you're in danger, your brain has to do something really quickly. It's got to take a step. So it's either going to protect you from that danger. It can't wait for your thinking brain to kick in. It's got to act fast. But this now makes it to be very impulsive. So the limbic brain is a very impulsive brain. It's fast and it's overpowering, because what it does, it overpowers our thinking brain. So let's look at some examples. If you're in a situation whereby maybe you've had a meeting with your boss and the meeting didn't go well. Your boss probably told you about all the things you've been doing wrong, all the things that you didn't get right. Kind of, it could be your performance review, and you've come out of there all, and it probably told you some positive things as well. But when you got out of that meeting, all you could remember was all the limiting things they told you, all the negative things that you were told. So, and that is your emotional brain processing it. And what it then does is that it translates it into a thought process and into an action. And that thought process depends on what is already in memory in your brain. So, what you then are processing and saying to yourself is, I'm not good enough, I'm incompetent. And all this start going, processing through your brain. And then what you do is that you probably go home, still processing this, still going through it. And you might start taking some actions. In some cases, because it's your boss, you might go home and then you fall sick, or you really get bad. But if it's somebody that accused you of something that you did not do, the same information, what you might do is that emotional brain, it kicks in immediately. And what you then do is you lash out. You might lash out at the person, because that is your emotional brain acting. And what it does is that it activates your fight, flight, or freeze response mechanism. So it's either you're fighting, where you're lashing back and getting defensive, or you're fleeing, you literally just run out of the place in maybe upset and very emotional, or you freeze. This is where a situation whereby you might not say anything. That's not saying anything might be freezing in shock, or just literally just stumped, really stumped about what has been said. So all these reactions are the threat response, and this is from this response that enables us take actions. The problem is that when we keep repeating the same actions, it becomes a habit, and then that is what we call our behavior pattern. So today, the key thing I want you to take note of is the emotional part of the brain acts fast, but and it's when it acts, or if it doesn't see anything that is a threat, then the prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, kicks in. So the question now is, or rather, when it does work, you now need to ask yourself the question, what, this, the way I'm feeling, why am I feeling this way? Is this the way I want to feel? That way, it's almost like putting a brake on the emotional part of the brain, because what that amygdala does in particular is that when it's activated, it deactivates this frontal part of the brain. What do I mean by that? When the amygdala is activated, we say it hijacks the brain, and it does that because it takes oxygen from other parts of the brain and body, and one of the first places is this frontal part, because when you're in danger, the last thing you want to be doing is processing things. For example, if a snake comes in here, the last thing I want to do is start admiring it to see where, that's, some people might, but for me, no, it is I've wired into my brain that is a threat, so I won't be admiring it to see how big it is, whether it's dangerous or not dangerous. What I have wired into my brain is that all snakes are dangerous. So my amygdala will pick up on that. And what will I do? I'll literally be out of here. You guys will be left on your own. So the question then is, what have we wired into our brain? Because what you then find is that our amygdala is hijacking our prefrontal cortex even when things are not really a danger, because we have probably wired into our brain that it is. So, for example, bringing this now to something like goal setting, you set a goal probably at the beginning of the year that you probably want to go to the gym more, or that you're going to be doing more walking, or that you're going to start a business, or that you're going to scale your business, or that you're going to apply for a new job, or apply for a new role in your organization. And then as it gets to the time, what happens? You start finding that you're making excuses. I'll do it tomorrow. Do I really want to apply for that job now? What if I don't get it? I know I'm not going to get that job. So what's the point of applying for it? Okay, I'm going to start working, but you know what? It's so cold now. I'll do it tomorrow. Okay, I'll do it next week. And you start putting it off. And this is where things like self-sabotage or procrastination kick in. Why? Your emotional part of the brain has detected what you've kept in memory, and what you've kept in memory is that it's you don't need to do it, it's not important, it's tiring, it's too cold. All that information it's picking up, and it will then make you take an action, and that action could be inaction, basically. So it's important to just stop and ask yourself the question, especially when you find that you're making decisions. The question is, where are you making the decisions from? Are you making them from that emotional part of the brain, or are you making it from your thinking brain, from your logical brain? And that is where you really want to be making the decisions from. But like I said, that emotional part of the brain is so fast. So when information comes, it's acting really fast, and it's very overpowering. So the best way to be able to, I would say, reprogram or rewire your brain is to start wiring into your brain what you want. One of the things emotions you tend to find when the emotional part of the brain has been activated, emotions like frustration, anger, anxiety, overwhelm. Maybe you're going to do a presentation, you find that you're getting really anxious about it. Then that's the time to stop and ask the question, why am I feeling this way? What have I wired into my brain about this situation? What have I said? What is in memory? What is my brain working with? Because we say, once you start asking the question, what you're literally doing is putting a brake on that emotional part of the brain, so that your thinking brain can kick in, and you can then be logical about it. Because the fact is that the emotional brain bases its thinking on emotions. So it's emotions first, then thoughts next. While our logical brain is thinking first, then it adds the emotion to it. And this is also why it's important that when setting goals, if you set goals just logically, this the beginning of the year, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. What you're doing is just doing it logically. And that is why you most times you give up on it. Why? Because when you then want to start, the emotional brain that you haven't involved in that preparation, which is more overpowering, which is very quick, will stop you from achieving those goals. And that's why most times you start and you don't finish. So even when setting goals, it's important to connect both of them to enable you achieve those goals. And that's why in the Mindsight Academy, one of the things that we're doing is going through the 4 steps that I created to enable you understand the best way to set those goals. Because if you don't do that, what you will find is that you're starting and stopping. So if you want to know more, there's a link at the bottom that will take you to the Mindsight Academy. And the actual program is we are doing it in the Mindsight Women's Network. So, join us there and just really get to grips with how to set goals effectively. So, another thing about the brain in terms of emotions is, I always say, always start with asking yourself the question, who am I? And a lot of times people say, but why is that important? It's important because when you find yourself saying things, which is what the emotional brain really gets us to do a lot of times, is you hear people telling themselves, I'm a warrior. I'm very quick at losing my temper. Or in fact, I wrote something down to here to remind me, okay, I'm a warrior. I get angry easily. That's the one. I get angry easily. What you're doing is kind of owning it. But the fact is that you're not a warrior, and you don't get it's not you that's getting angry easily, it's your brain. So it's not you, it's your brain. And making that disconnection is so important because it will then help you help yourself, basically. Because once you disconnect yourself from it, in essence, what you're then saying is, actually, it's my emotional brain that is the warrior. It's my emotional brain that gets angry easily. So what do I need to do? How can I engage my thinking brain to then help me not be a warrior, so that I'm not scared of taking actions. I don't hold back out of fear of failure. I don't hold back out of fear of getting it wrong. And you see, that's one thing about the emotional brain. Its drive is to win. So it's that power game. Its drive is really to win. You see, while the prefrontal cortex, its own focus is on solution. So that's why once you ask the question, what can I do differently? How can what plan do I have? How can what am I thinking? Once you start asking the questions, then your prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, is able to kick in, and then your emotional brain can calm down, and you're able to really take the action you want. And that's why I say it's really worth paying attention to situations and ask yourself, am I reacting, or am I actually responding to this situation? Because when you're reacting, it's your subconscious emotional brain that is in control. But when you're responding, it means that you have allowed your prefrontal cortex, the thinking brain, to now kick in, which is where you can then make intentional decisions about things. And this is where it then becomes important to then ask the questions about, other questions in terms of your goal setting. Who am I associating with? Where am I getting information from? What am I using to keep me motivated? How do I sustain this drive or this move I'm making to ensure that you keep going? So if you've got questions, please pop them into the comments so I can pick them up. Okay, a question has come in. Thank you, Kaka. Let me put it up here. So bear with me. while I remove this. Okay. How do I control my brain to stop and think before I act negatively? Okay. So the great question, actually, I like this. Um, One of the things to remember is that over time, you've wired your brain over a certain way. So you've probably wired your brain to be quite negative about things, and it could be a case that's not everything but some things in particular. So maybe it's that you've wired your brain that you're a warrior, or you've wired your brain that to run a business is difficult, or you've wired your brain to be in terms of it's dangerous traveling. You've wired your brain in different ways, so that's there. Do you see? So it's already there and it's wired into the memory of your brain. So in order to change that, and the first thing I would say is awareness. Awareness is number one. Awareness, that is paying attention to what you say, paying attention to your thoughts, paying attention to what you're taking in. So when people say things, do you just absorb it and take it in? So just pay attention to all that. And then when you identify a negative thought, then it's time to start changing it. And this is where the whole rewiring of the brain comes in. So recognize it first, then change it. And I call that reframe. So reframe that negative thought that you've had, or negative belief that you have. And then the other aspect of it is just just ignore that negative. Focus on the positive that you're rewiring, and keep repeating that. So you might even be going about your day, and you go that, I'm great at running a business. I'm good at exercising. It might be difficult, but I'm going to persevere. And I can see myself at a time that I'll be getting up every morning and going to exercise. So you're repeating it over and over. And the more you do that, it's not what you're doing is creating a new neural pathway, new pathway in the brain, a new wiring in the brain. And then as time goes on, that will become your default. So that is the best way to change the narrative. So you move from the negative to the positive. The other thing to do is when you catch yourself in that negative range, so maybe the amygdala has literally hijacked your brain and you notice the hijack. In fact, the best way to know when your amygdala has hijacked your brain is you maybe say something in anger or frustration and you regret it later. That's always a good way to know that, okay, that was my emotional brain. So it's important to understand that once you find yourself highly emotional about something and maybe about to say things or do things, that's the time to ask the question, do I want to feel this way? Is this a way I want to feel? And there's a book I read that he said you can also ask yourself the question, what's the plan? And that's really a good question. What's the plan? So literally, what's the plan of action we're going to take here? Is this what I want to say? Is this what I want to do? And it's just being really fast to ask yourself that question. Because once you ask the question, your what you're doing is engaging that thinking brain again. And when you do that, the emotional brain will then slow down. So that's the best way to move or control the brain to enable you to start thinking positively as opposed to the negative thoughts. So I hope that answered your question. So any other questions, please pop them into the chat. So that I can answer them. It's actually easier for me when you put questions in because it helps me to go deeper based on what you want. So that was a great question about moving. The bottom line is create the thoughts you want and remember that you can. You've got a choice. You can do it. So don't, and it's also asking yourself the question, do I want to have these thoughts? If the answer is no, then what thought do I want? And that's it. Start creating that new thought. And then the other one to do is, do I agree with this thought? Because that will also enable you understand what your thought processes are. And I think I have a slide here that I can show you that just shows the subconscious brain. Let's see if I can pull this up quickly, and it just gives you a pictorial view of what it is. So yes, let's see if I can put this up, share screen. Let's see. That's the one. Okay, so this diagram of the iceberg is a fantastic one to demonstrate the subconscious brain. And I always say that, remember that the subconscious brain is that part of the brain that is on autopilot, is a part, parts of the brain that we don't control, but it controls us. So most of what we do is driven by subconscious brain, which is about 90 to 95% of what we do. And inside the subconscious brain is where we have our values and beliefs. So all these things are stored in memory, experiences, our mindset, genetic traits, and cultural background. All these things are wired into our subconscious brain. And this is where our emotional brain gets a lot of the information from. And even our thinking brain, it gets the information from what we've stored in memory. The question is, what is in your memory? What are the beliefs you formed? Are there beliefs that you actually believe in now? Because most of the time, it's beliefs that we've inherited from our upbringing, from our parents, from teachers. The question is it what I want to believe? Do I agree with it? If it's not, then it's time to change it. Because when information comes in or you want to do something, then your brain will go to these thoughts, will go to the beliefs and values that you have. And then the conscious brain is that thinking brain, which is, can you see, it's just the top, it's just about 5% of what we do. So it's important to, let me remove that. Okay, perfect. So it's important to remember that a lot of that is already wired is actually probably not what you put in. And this is why a lot of times when we talk about being authentic, being our authentic self, the question is the authenticity really what you want? Because a lot of time what is authentic is what is wired in us, but it might not even be what we agree with. So it's really important to start questioning what your beliefs are and what you've wired in. Okay, thanks Kaka for this question. Another question here. Let's see what this is. Is it right to think that some people's good might be other people's bad? Oh, that's an interesting one. Is it right to think that some people's good might be other people's bad? I think I understand what you mean. Now, if yes, in essence, because what might be good for me might actually be bad for somebody else. So what is right for me might not be right for somebody else. If I understand, is that what your question means? Because, and this is why it becomes important to keep asking that question, to ask the question, do I agree with this? And is this right for me? Because it might be good for one person but not for me. And yes, so that's very true. So it is right to think that some people's good might not be, might be some people's bad. And it might even be that something that is right for you now might not be right, might be bad for you tomorrow as well. And it's important to keep that dynamics going as well. And it's just keep asking the question to yourself consistently to ensure that you're truly being true to yourself. So that's really important. So sometimes you have limiting thoughts, like I'm not as good or qualified as other people. I am not fluent in speaking or in doing things. Whenever I try something, it always fails. And you see, these kind of narratives are the kind of narratives that is true to someone, because maybe they've experienced business failure, maybe they've tried something in the past and it didn't work, maybe they've applied for a job in the past and they didn't get it. So when it's time to apply for a new job, then the emotional brain kicks in and it goes, what if you they tell you another no? What if you go and you make a fool of yourself? All the what ifs come out, and that's your emotional brain trying to protect you from the experience of being told a no again. And it's also that whole aspect of especially people in business or anybody, not wanting to ask for fear of being told no. And it's that whole emotional brain doing that. And this is why it then becomes important to ask yourself the question, why am I resisting the no? And it could actually be that within your brain wiring, they've wired some form of low self-esteem. Or maybe when you were young, or at some point there was an experience that was deeply emotional again, that was a no or a rejection or a breakup. So that, and it was so emotional and stored in memory so much that each time something similar comes up that you could be told a no or you could fail, that your brain then goes, don't do it. But you can change that narrative to, which is what happened to me when my business failed. When I then wanted to start another business, my emotional brain really woke up. Honestly, it literally woke up, and then it was going, what if it fails again? What if you lose all money again? What if? And it almost paralyzed me. But I had to change the narrative that, you know what, if I don't do it, I'll even feel worse. So I might as well do it. And even if it fails, at least I've done it and learned from it. And I then had to go back to that experience of the failing initially and processing it, and then saying, you know what, it was bad, but I learned so much from it and I built so much confidence from it. So I had to now go back and look at the positives. And honestly, the positives were huge. And if I didn't go through that experience, then I won't be doing what I'm doing now. So it's that reframing that is important. Okay, there's another question here. Let's see. Richard, thank you for this question. You say, how can you or we use our expertise in emotional intelligence to deal with narcissistic individuals? Oh, I like that. That's a good one. Now, the thing about narcissistic people, in fact, the thing about anybody is, and this is the truth, the only person you can control is yourself. You can't control anyone else. So it's not even worth trying, unless the person that you're trying to change or willing to change has agreed that within themselves that they do need to change. So if they agree that they need to change, then you can help them change. But for a narcissistic person, they probably don't even realize that they need to change anyway. So it's difficult. So you are the one that will have to adapt. You are the one that will have to adapt, how, depending on the relationship. If it's one that you don't have to be with, you stay away. If it's one that you have to be with, maybe work with or live with, then it's adapting yourself. And I always say it's this way, yeah. It's you protecting your own emotional state. So it's looking at situations. What do they say? What do they do? And also remember, with most people and narcissistic people, it's not about you at all. So nothing they do or say is about you. It's really them. And most of the time, it's coming from a place of it's coming from a place of insecurity. So they are the ones with the problem. They are the ones with the issue. Whatever they are saying, it's that emotional part of the brain that I said at the beginning. Its drive is to win, and its status, it's that whole, I want to be seen, it's all about me. So for you, it's a case of, you've got to learn to really ignore a lot of what they say and not take it personally, or learn to walk with the person. But the main thing is to manage your own emotions. So pay attention. What I would say, Richard, is pay attention to yourself. So when something happens, what do you feel? And what are you telling yourself? And that's what you need to reframe. So that emotion that you feel, is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it hurt? Does it make you feel little? What does it make you feel? pay attention to those feelings, to the emotions, and pay attention to the narrative you're telling yourself. And that's what you need to work on, and go through those steps that I mentioned. The recognize the thought or recognize the emotion, reframe it. So change the narrative, and remember, one of the things you're changing it to is that this is not about me, it's about them. It's their own insecurity, it's their own problem. And then what's the other one? Release it. So let it go, and then reinforce. So keep reinforcing this new narrative you want, and then keep repeating it till it becomes effortless. And then you find that you're being with the same person and it doesn't impact you. You know what? I've got some friends who are very what's the word to use? They are very self-absorbed of themselves, basically. I won't call them narcissistic, but they're really into who they are and what they can be. And people always wonder, how do you get on with people like this? But I do, because I know, at the end of the day, in fact, a lot of times I've got one that will say things to put me down, to make her feel good. I am fortunately, I don't see her. I don't, it's not somebody that I interact with that much. But when we do interact, it comes out like that. But I don't even let it bother me, because the end of the day, and I think I touched on this before, it comes back to that whole question of who am I? Who am I, first and foremost? And for me, I know who I am. I'm the child of the Most High God. I am, I am confident in who I am. I'm a very smart woman. I remind myself who I am. And I end up with, and I am limitless. So when I know who I am, you can do what you like, you can say what you like. It doesn't bother me, because I know who I am. So I hope that helped you, Richard. Um, so yeah, if anyone has any more questions, I'm coming to the end now, and I hope I've given you something to think about, something to process, but also pay attention to your own brain, because that would really save you a lot of problems, a lot of hurt, but also give you confidence to do those things that you've been putting off. So the goals that you've probably given up on, pick them up and do them, go for them. So when the brain then starts going, oh, leave that till tomorrow, you ask yourself, why did I set this goal in the first place? What is it that I want to achieve out of this? It's bringing that thinking brain into, back into action, and then using that, answer that question, and then let that guide you into taking the action. Remember, your emotional brain is still working on the past, it's working on memory. So it doesn't know this new memory that you're trying to create. And it's like going to exercise. The brain is literally a muscle, but it's like going to exercise. When you start, your muscles are all crying, and I can testify to that, because I just started swimming, and my right shoulder muscle, oh my gosh, I think I woke it up. It literally, like, what are you doing to me, woman? And it's been aching for weeks. It's a lot better now, but that's exactly why. It's a muscle I hadn't used for years, so when I started using it, it did hurt. And the same principle, when you start this new narrative, creating what you want, or you decide you want to do something and your emotional brain is saying no, it's you insisting that, you know what, this is for my good. I know why I said I was going to do this. I know why I need to do it. And then you take the action, literally move and do what you need to do, because you know that repeated behavior will create a new behavior pattern. But if you let your emotional brain to keep stopping you from doing what you need to do and keeping you in the past, then you find that you'll be stuck. You won't move forward. You won't do what you need to do. And then at the end, you start regretting not achieving what you want to achieve. So I hope this helps. And just remember, when you find yourself making impulsive decision, it's your emotional brain that has taken control. It's probably hijacked, so you need to, bring it out. You need to stop it or put the brakes on and let your logical brain kick in. And even with the logical brain, remember, it's still using what's stored in memory, which is usually from that other part of the limbic system known as the hippocampus. So you need to then ask the question, is this what I want? Is this how I want to feel? Is this, do I agree with this thought process? Do I agree with this thought that I'm having? And then if you don't change it, start reframing it till it becomes effortless. So I'm going to stop here for today, and I hope this has given you something to think about, something to work on, something to really help you understand that you indeed can take control of your brain by making the decision and acting on what you want. And it's a choice. It's your choice, and it's something you can definitely do because we have the ability to do it. So I am so pleased you joined me today, and I really hope that I'll see you. We're probably going to be doing this once a month. So I look forward to coming back and doing this again next month. Have a lovely rest of your day and have a lovely February, and I will see you in March. But in the meantime, please subscribe to my YouTube channel in particular. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then go watch my podcast, Lead to Excel podcast. And I have a fantastic one coming out tomorrow, where tomorrow, which is the 4th of February, is World Cancer Day. And I've got I was in discussion with a lady, Denise Ejo, who is living with cancer, and it's just such a powerful podcast. She really opened up to us. So watch out for that. It's going live tomorrow, and it's one you would not want to miss. Share the podcast, share this video on replay for others to also watch. And I'll see you next month. Bye for now.